is Peter Nemes. I'm a lecturer at the Department of International Studies.
My name is Valeria Varga, and I'm the Hungarian language instructor at the Central Eurasian Studies Department.
And we're here to talk about what can be done in 8 weeks. Lessons from a crash course in culture. We, both of us, participated in the Emerging Economies course at Kelly, and we did what is the culture component of that. In order for students to get ready for their trip. This is a course that is offered by Kelly in the spring, and for a couple of years they've been doing trips to emerging economies. So it's 8 weeks of classroom instructions where they learn mostly, of course, about economy, but it has a culture component. And then during the spring break, it's a very intensive spring break. They go to travel. Countries they visited included Ghana, Chile, China, and of course Hungary, which was together with Croatia. And we were involved in this, in the Hungarian preparation for the trip. And then after that they come back and they have, of course, the end of the semester to finish their project. So the idea is that these courses combine classroom learning with on-the-field experience. The trips are short but very intensive. All throughout the day, the students go into meetings. They meet with businessmen, with officials, locals, small entrepreneurships, big companies, and of course it has a component of actually being immersed in the country, learning about the country, their culture trips, if you wish, or little side trips that they do, and they also get to enjoy some of the nightlife, or actually being with the in the country. It's a very interesting course because, again, it tries to combine classroom learning and on-hands experience in a short amount of time. And in order to maximize that time, they bring people like us in. We are both Hungarians. We teach at IU, and we were approached to help prepare the students for the Hungarian part of the trip. And so, of course, the question is, what can be done in such a short amount of time? And when I say short amount of time, it is really limited because they have classroom where they learn about the emerging economy part of it, and before spring break, they're 8 weeks, and they have a big lecture where they learn about economies in general and the challenges of emerging economies, and then depending on which country they go to, there are about 20 students going into each country, and there are usually 3 to 4 different target countries per semester. So there were about 20 people going to Croatia and Hungary. And what they do is we meet then once a week with them. Now, so that's 8 weeks, but it's really 6 because the first week it's just introduction. The last week before the trip, it's all about don't forget your visa, etc. So it's really, we have 6 weeks to prepare them. We also have this unique, we had the problem of, or not problem, we had the challenge of visiting 2 countries, Croatia. So there was a Croatian teacher as well there. And during this very short amount of time, we have to focus on both countries and include a little bit of language training, which Valeria will talk about in a little bit, and also this cultural background. So how do you do this? What can be achieved in such a short amount of time, covering both language and culture, especially with 2 countries? And the answer to that is, of course, and again, I will talk about the culture part because that's what I had to do, and I was also there on one of the trips, so I will at the end talk a little bit about that. What can we include in this short amount of time? We want to give a background. We want to have those kids arrive at a place that they've never been to and have a sense, an idea of what the country is about. Simply not to feel alien in the place. So we include information about basic geography, about basic country statistics, if you wish. We give a short background on history. Obviously, countries present, especially the economic present, will not be understandable if you don't understand at least a little bit about the history. We give a little bit a taste of literature and art, about business culture, etiquette, so behavior, which in our case is not that different. Obviously, students going to China, for example, had to learn a little bit more about that, and just basic current politics and the economic situation. We do this in a variety of ways. We have PowerPoint lectures that we put together that we share with the students. We give them handouts, of course, and I think most importantly, we share stories, we share anecdotes, because that's what they will remember. The class is, again, not a class about Hungarian history or culture or language, but we have to just give them enough of a background, and that's a balancing act for us, and we have to keep it kind of informative and interesting at the same time. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. There's some example slides that you can see. We try to, again, just enough information that they know what they're getting into, if you wish, in terms of the country. We want to install a basic sense of where they are once they arrive. We want to give them a basic understanding of the country and instill in them a sense, if you wish, of openness, of being ready for whatever those meetings or everyday encounters on the street, in shopping situations, in restaurants, etc., enable them to experience. And that kind of openness will be better served if they have this kind of background.
One thing that I really liked about what they did, that I saw them actually be realistic about like what was going on and how they handled it. In school, we kind of get the textbook version, don't do this, don't do that. But I think the actually talking to someone who's been through it and that's seen so many things through it, that I really appreciate.
Were there any examples that stood out to you, or something you thought, gosh, I can't believe what they have to go through?
Oh, one thing still amazes me just about like the healthcare system, how they have to pay people on the side to make sure that they're treated correctly. That to me is still like, you take things for granted when you actually go to the doctor here, and you just go and you are taken care of either through your bursar or something else or insurance, and you think like, oh, well, I'm okay, I trust the person and I trust what he's doing. I don't feel like I need to give them anymore. And then just to see like other takes on that, and to see like what other people have to do to get the same amount of healthcare, it's really, you realize how blessed you are.
So that's the basic kind of purpose of our part of the course. And one very important element of this is, of course, the language instruction, which is what Valeria will talk about.
I will try my best. So first of all, I would like to connect at a few points to what Peter mentioned in his introduction. So the structure of the course was not our idea. It was requested by the business school. The course objectives were clear. The students will travel for a business trip to Hungary and Croatia, Zagreb and Budapest. They should be prepared for the trip. The situation was one of the clearest examples. Was one of the clearest example of backward planning. So instead of the traditional way of planning a course, what will I teach, how I will do it, and finally how to assess what I did, our starting point was the goal, so the assessment. The how and what came only after. There were other interesting aspects of planning the course. Among those, the first and most important challenge was the way we organized the course. It was team teaching. Team teaching is a very specific way of working together, like putting together a puzzle. The pieces of the puzzle should connect, but at the same time, they also have an independent content. Putting together these pieces was the most challenging part of our work together. The first and most important task we faced this way was developing the syllabus, which, like puzzle pieces, was built on each other's ideas and parts. This was, though, one of the most successful aspects of the course. In the end, it really functioned as a whole, had a really interesting content, the different parts, Croatian, Hungarian, language and culture, connected in an exciting, new, vibrant way, created an interesting cultural context. By the way, this is what we generally do in our classes. Otherwise, we have to be able to establish a cultural space for our students. So we create the cultural space into the emptiness of the classroom. Am I right? And obviously, our students enjoyed our classes, and I think that was a very important part of our experience. More precisely, this created cultural space. This created cultural space made it possible for them to learn better. The time pressure was huge, but this time it forced us to really focus on the most important details of the language and the culture. These students traveled to the target country right after the course. They needed immediate results. There was no time for reorganizing the previously learned materials. And I personally had 90 minutes when I counted this whole process. I personally had 90 minutes for the Hungarian language part. So, here's the first slide with the question that what can be done in 90 minutes? Specifically, you can answer the question that nothing, but you cannot start teaching a course like that I give up immediately in the beginning. So we have just as a background information, I would like to show you a slide that at IU, we teach Hungarian at 3 levels. We call that introductory, intermediate, and advanced level. Sometimes we have very high-level independent reading courses for graduate students. So in the so-called introductory class, we have 160 contact hours per 2 semesters, 128 in the intermediate and 128 in the advanced classes. So our background for teaching is always the ACTFL guidelines, so the American Council of Teaching Foreign Languages guidelines, and of course the ILR OPI exam scale. ILR means that the interagency language roundtables oral proficiency interview system, which influences on our foreign language teaching at IU tremendously. So in order to understand what 90 minutes means in a language course, that short background was very important to understand. Here in this slide, I show you how the ACTFL ILR OPI functions, structured. The different levels of the language is level 0 plus, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 and 5. Levels have different functions. So the level 0 plus is always listing. So what kind of lists we build when we teach the language here is important. So you see that we create lists of foods, colors, objects, clothing, whatever, and the language feature is the words. The second level is that short conversation, past narration, so the sentence, and the higher levels of functions as hypotheses or targeting abstract ideas or support opinions. These functions come at level 3 or 4, so the very high levels exactly. So, of course, we have to. This other, slide shows that where we go in the different levels of our courses. So in the introductory level, it's 0 plus, maybe 1. In the intermediate, it's level 1 and 2, advanced level 2, 2 plus, and in the ADLS courses, so the higher level courses, we target the higher levels of the language, which means 2 plus, 3, or sometimes more. So the real question when you face, so where can we get in 90 minutes? And the answer is creating lists. So what we had to do is we had to think, or I had to think very carefully, so what kind of lists can we create? These lists are very different from those of what we create in the language classes. In the language courses, in our regular IU language courses, we create lists for the future. Every list we create in the present or in the actual class will be a previous or pre-existing knowledge in the future. We reorganize it, and it put it on the next level. Here in this course, or in this very rush language course, there is no need for, and there is no opportunity for that. We created lists for specific purposes. So, what were those very specific, first we had to take what kind of places the students will be. It will be the airport, street, hotel, restaurant, city, transportation, store, shopping, or what kind of functions they have to, somehow get. It's greeting people, asking for basic information, so where is something, or how much is something, or sometimes, do you have this or that on the menu, for example, in a restaurant.
And really adjusting to your surrounding environment is tough, and I would definitely recommend knowing some language is really important. I know that they definitely appreciate it and they're very surprised when you do use language, and I've been the one using it the most out of our whole group. I actually just had a conversation with someone in just Hungarian, which is pretty neat. Yes, it was just hello, thank you, and goodbye, but he had no idea that I was English because I spoke only Hungarian to him. So it was a neat experience. It made me feel pretty cool, and if I did have time, I definitely would have gone and tried to learn more Hungarian to make the experience a little better.
Also, it was very important that they should be able to introduce themselves, that I am Joan, I'm American, I'm a vegetarian, I'm not a vegetarian, where is the bank, the museum, the restroom, how much is this or that product. The best, vocabulary for reading and phonetics were of course, the loan words from different languages. Because if you take a look at that list, that hotel, bank, museum, metro, telephone, mobile, TV, kávé, tea, buffet, hot dog, pizza, or bicikli, even auto, and other vocabulary, it's well known for everybody. You shouldn't be Hungarian to understand that. But that gave us a background, not only for the vocabulary, but also for reading. The question hol van a, you see, it's very easy to where is the in Hungarian. So if you get the phrase hol van a, you can create sentences. Hol van a hotel, hol van a bank, hol van a metro. So functioning in the city was our goal. So students could function in the city, and at the same time we could practice the reading, how to pronounce these words. And also, how do pictures help us? Because that was also a very important situation, and the students will be in the streets of Budapest. So what kind of street signs can they see there, or will they see there? And also it came together not just the readings, but also we connected with cultural information, because of course all the street names are famous people or famous events. So numbers, food names, cities and buildings, that was, I think, our biggest help in the language part. And what basically we wanted to give those students who travel to Hungary is kind of the comfort in the culture. So kind of a feeling, the feeling of home, or feeling the comfort of the culture.
It's been a really great cultural experience. We've learned a lot of different things about both Croatia and Hungary, and we've gotten to talk to a lot of locals and get their take on things and their take on us, which is always interesting. And it's just been really fun, and we learned a lot through some of our visits, and they gave us free stuff too, which was nice. But it's been a great overall experience, and definitely worth my spring break.
And now I give back the word to Peter, and he is going to share his experiences. So what happened after the trip? So what kind of conclusions can we have?
Yes. So how does this end up then in the streets of Budapest? The truth is that we knew going in that this is a very limited amount of time and very limited things that we can do, especially with a language that is so different than English, and the students had really little to connect to. That's why, of course, the vocabulary that specifically was presented helped a lot. The reality, of course, is that they were 4 days in Budapest. They were in a group of 20, 25 Americans all the time. They were meeting businessmen. They were meeting local representatives of like the city or government. And of course, the language used was English. So there's no question that they didn't use Hungarian, that they had not much of a chance to use Hungarian. At the same time, I think it was extremely important that we gave this kind of introduction to both language and culture. Because, so what do we end up with? Is it survival
Sorry
skill?
for the interruption,
Yeah.
Peter, but there was an interesting situation. I got back from the students after the trip that they were in Budapest on March 15th, which is the biggest Hungarian holiday. And on that day, they were really deeply immersed into the culture and everything and into the language. They just, I think I got back that they could use many of the phrases and they could really interpret that day in the street.
Yes,
very
I
well.
think, I don't know how much they were actually talking, but they were certainly understanding what they were a part of. They were, I mean, March 15 celebrates the revolution of 1848, and that's an important date in Hungarian history, and we talked about that. And so they were prepared and ready for what they experienced, and that is certainly true. And they were very proud even of the very few words that they were able to say. What they get is really a comfort, if you wish, a kind of being in that culture zone and then being in the country and getting reinforced that all these little things that we talked about in class, preparing them, they're there, they exist, and so they ended up having a great time. Of course, it was spring break. It was a great trip for them. And I think for us it was also a success. If we plan it properly, if we approach it in the proper way, if we don't try to cram too much into that limited amount of time, and we put our hopes and goals. Again, we would love to give them more, and we love to give them more contacts, and Valeria would love to teach them, all of them how to speak Hungarian perfectly. But it's just, of course, not possible. However, I think without our preparation, without this little crash course, they would have not gained as much during those 4 days in Hungary as they did after this preparation. I was there with them for one of these trips, acting in part, of course, as a translator. And they would continuously come up and kind of reinforce and ask about things, especially, we waited in waiting rooms or we were on public transportation. So we had some time where we were just standing or crammed together. And they were asking about, this meeting we had, they talked about, I don't know, for example, about the healthcare. And they remember that I mentioned the difference in the healthcare system. So this reinforcement of these differences, cultural and pertaining to economy especially, were extremely valuable for them.
So it was a success, Peter.
I would say it was a success. It was certainly something that
I think so.
is very important to integrate in a course like that. And you can see a couple of pictures. Of course, food is a very big part of all this.
One of the basic, components of the list was creating the food names and.
Yes, and they were excited, and they were asking me, when can we get this? When can we get that?
And they tried, I said.
Yes, they tried everything they could.
Cake.
Yes, they were coming to me, and I was born and raised in that city, so whenever they had just an hour between meetings and we were in a part of the city, they would ask, okay, is there a good bakery here, or is there a good cafe here that we could go? Of course, we don't live in Budapest anymore, so I was just keeping my fingers crossed that those cafes are still there. But they really enjoyed it, and probably again came back with not just a newfound understanding, or after the completion of this course, not just a newfound understanding of what emerging economies are like, what their challenges are, but also having this special knowledge.
So Natasha, we just finished our visits to Zagreb and Budapest. What's some good takeaway from this experience for you?
There's a lot of good takeaways. We learned a lot about different places here, and mostly about their economy, which is an emerging economies class, so that's great. I learned that not only is there different ways of doing things over here, but the culture is just so different. And by culture, I mean not just your food and the way that people behave, but the way that your corporations are ran and the way that business is done. So that was interesting to see firsthand, and it was a great experience.
The way this ends is with the project, and as another kind of component, how we were involved is we were sent the final project papers that they created in little groups, and they started working. They were assigned into groups during the trip, and then the main instructor sent me the final papers and asked comments, again, to make sure that that the cultural part, that when they reference something, that it's correct or it's there. So there's a feedback built into the course.
There was a wonderful, moment when the students gave the presentations, the final presentations, and we were also invited, and we were able to.
Yes, so that's the course is very neatly tied up at the end, where we are invited back for the presentation, and we enjoyed that a lot. And it's a group of people that still stay in contact, and will occasionally update us on Facebook, of course. These pictures are from Facebook, of course. Where else? And there's a little group about this trip, and every once in a while they will say things like, "Oh, I made specific food that they learned or that they enjoyed there."
Not to mention that while they were in the course, they came to the Hungarian receptions, what we have.
Yes, and that's another, of course, we have the Hungarian Culture Association at IU, and so pulling them into that, into events, culture events that were taking place on campus was another way to get them ready. So overall, we can say that it was a great success, and again, with proper planning, it's a very important part of this course.